Tollymore, A Place to Ponder and Pray by Peter Hoover. Chapter 5, Action. The full bloom of spring had blessed the northwest coast of Tasmania in November 1876. Gentle breezes from the north had exchanged the roaring winds of the south, and the kookaburras had less to talk about, so busy with feeding their young. Not so much raucous laughter, but the ominous rumbling of the male birds warning others to keep their distance. Up in Queensland, they said, a settler had discovered gold. A team of Aboriginal cricketers, now touring the British Isles, had taken England by storm. And in New South Wales, a farmer had not only seen a bunyip fair and square, and even chased it for several miles, only to see it escape. 6 young nurses, straight from Florence Nightingale's school in England, had arrived at Sydney. But the Blackwells and their neighbours around Table Cape did not focus on the news. They had more pressing things to do, and Uncle John Margetts took it upon himself to tackle the colonial government. "It is absolutely not right," Bill Moore had declared gravely. "More than ever, Edwin Blackwell needs to be here with his mum and sister. He needs to take care of their stock, their land, their buildings. It is not right for our government to take the advantage of free labour on a trumped-up charge. Alex Clark and George Shackleton have written public letters. What came of it? I am not related, but someone must address the matter." Bravely, Uncle John set out to do what he could. "I will start with the constable in Wynyard," he said. "But if he will not listen to me, I will go on to Longford, where so many people know us and where they dealt with the Newry Mill." Even though Uncle John never saw himself as a particularly religious man, he found himself now riding to Wynyard with a thought of prayer in his mind. "This situation is desperate," he directed his thought heavenward. "Dear God, my sister needs our son. Would you please help me get him back?" Or would anyone at Wynyard be able to help? Only 6 miles from home, the small settlement of Wynyard had tried to get on its feet. A British traveller who had posted his experiences in Tasmania had this to say: "Wynyard on the River Inglis is a poor, miserable-looking place. Nearly the whole of it is covered in scrub and good-sized trees here and there. There are no roads in the area, nothing but rough tracks made by paling cutters, impossibly dusty in the summer, and slushy potholes in the winter. 6 or 7 houses all told." Miserable as it looked, Wynyard, to be sure, had a magistrate, a constabulary with a chief officer, a policeman, and an alert crew of troopers, well armed and trigger-happy, to keep the area under control. Too many bush rangers about to live without the force of British law, and even then things happened. Such as the day 2 bush rangers looted the area, stole a boat off the Inglis, and managed to get far enough out to sea to avoid getting shot. The troopers did their best, but by the time they got there, their quarry had escaped. Rather than falling over dead, the bush rangers took off their hats and waved at the troopers, who, frustrated, could do little more than take off their caps and wave back. Many things circled through Uncle John's mind as he came trotting down the winding road to Wynyard. At the same time, at Longford, Edwin, no longer wincing at the loud, uncouth language around him, kept working. A note had come. Although he could not read, Drew Barker had passed on the information that came from home. He cried inwardly. No longer wearing his ridiculous criminal breeches, one leg white and the other black, he continued to feel constantly his ongoing imprisonment. The lawyer's farm had become his second jail, and during the night, on his evil-smelling bed, his pillow, stuffed with straw that had long gone flat, often turned wet with tears. Was he angry? Was he sad? Was he lonesome? Edwin did not know for sure. Some of all three, no doubt. But one thing that did happen, strangely, was what came from his halting attempts to pray. "Do I even deserve to pray to God?" he asked himself repeatedly. "I am not a very good boy, yet I should not be here." Thankfully, as his imprisonment dragged on and on, Edwin found his secret prayers the most calming, sustaining, and helpful thing. They kept happening more and more often. Was it only to block out my depressing surroundings, he wondered at times? But somehow it helps. And help is indeed what he needed most. Now, In Wynyard, Uncle John stepped resolutely into the somewhat rickety but sobering presence of the law. The Union Jack hung limply from its standard. Uncle John stared, for a moment, at the captivating portrait on the wall. The young and newly crowned monarch of Great Britain and the British Empire, a woman, now with the title Queen Victoria. What could one read from her serene but commanding presence? Uncle John did not know, but fortunately the constable seemed approachable. Mr. Chellew, as they called him, a Cornish man with an accent but also with a kind expression in his eyes, listened carefully to what Uncle John had to say. He took notes and seemed particularly interested in what brought the Blackwells to send Edwin on his mission alone to Launceston. "I cannot guarantee anything," the constable said, "but I will try to get this investigated as soon as possible. Just do not expect prompt results. A legal investigation needs to travel through a number of official levels. I will certainly let you know as soon as I can of any further resolution." Uncle John took a deep breath. "But now," the constable continued, "I will need to have all the exact details, the names of the subjects, and the times of occurrences. Are you prepared to help me now to get this all together?" Still sad, but with a somewhat lighter heart, Uncle John came back to Springfield that night with a reasonably encouraging report. "Oh, John," Mum said, "I have been praying all day. God must know. He must know how much we need Edwin back." "Hopefully he does," Uncle John, Mum's younger brother, agreed, without enthusiasm. Annie, after he had gone and Mum had put out the light, kept lying awake. She also began to pray. Not just the Lord's Prayer she had known all her life, but a somewhat curious one. Few words, long gaps. Perhaps not well worded, but it also brought a semblance of peace, and she fell asleep. A quieter, more restful night than she had experienced for a long time. Nearly a month later, at the beginning of the rainy season, Edwin, a bit taller, but muscular and lean, stood at Mum and Annie's door.